My name is Cora Wilson, 60 years old, and yesterday I buried Frank, my husband of 35 years. As I stood receiving condolences from our friends, something unthinkable happened. My son Justin walked in with a woman I'd never seen before. Mom, he announced to everyone, this is Amanda. She was Dad's true love and my real mother. I felt the room spin as he handed me an envelope. The house isn't yours anymore, he whispered. It's going to who deserves it. I never imagined my husband's funeral would be where my life truly fell apart. If you're watching this, let me know where you're from in the comments. Hit subscribe to hear how I discovered my husband's deepest secret and how I fought back when they tried to take everything from me. Frank and I met at Boston University in 1985. I was studying elementary education and he was pursuing architecture. We were both from middle-class families and understood the value of hard work. I remember our first date at a small Italian restaurant near campus. Frank talked passionately about designing buildings that would stand for generations. His eyes lit up when he described how architecture could shape communities. After graduation, we moved to Seattle for Frank's job with a prestigious architecture firm. We bought our first apartment together, a tiny one-bedroom that barely fit our second-hand furniture. Those early years were full of dreams and plans. We'd stay up late, talking about the future, the family we wanted, the places we'd visit together. In 1990, Frank received his first major promotion, and we celebrated by finally buying a real house. It wasn't fancy, a modest three-bedroom in a nice neighborhood, but it was ours. We spent weekends painting walls and planting a garden. Frank designed a beautiful deck where we spent summer evenings watching the sunset. 3 years later, our son Justin was born. I can still picture Frank holding him for the first time, tears streaming down his face. "This is what life's all about, Cora," he whispered. I took a break from teaching to stay home with Justin, and those years were precious. Frank would come home from work and immediately get down on the floor to play with his son. They had a special bond from the beginning. When Justin started school, I returned to teaching 4th grade at Lakeside Elementary. Our routine was comfortable and predictable. Frank focused on his career, eventually becoming a partner at his firm. I loved working with my students while maintaining our home. We weren't wealthy, but we had everything we needed. As Justin grew, Frank coached his little league team and helped with science projects. We took family vacations to national parks every summer. Justin was sometimes moody as a teenager, but I chalked it up to normal adolescence. Frank always seemed to know how to connect with him when I couldn't. "He's just finding himself," Frank would assure me. "Give him space." Justin went to Washington State University, and though he wasn't far away, his visits became less frequent. Frank often mentioned meeting him for lunch or attending sporting events together. "Father-son time," he called it. I was happy they remained close. 5 years ago, Frank was diagnosed with a heart condition. The doctor said it was genetic and prescribed medication and lifestyle changes. Frank took it in stride, but I worried constantly. I started cooking healthier meals and insisted on daily walks together. The health scare brought us closer. In the evenings, we'd sit on our deck talking about retirement plans and places we still wanted to see. 3 weeks ago, Frank collapsed in our kitchen. The ambulance came within minutes, but he was gone before we reached the hospital. A massive heart attack, they said. I was numb with shock. Justin flew home immediately, seeming devastated. He helped me arrange the funeral and sat beside me as we selected Frank's casket. We cried together, and I was grateful for his support. Frank's death was sudden, but there had been no hints of any secrets. We'd just celebrated our 35th anniversary with a weekend trip to Victoria. Frank had written me a beautiful card about our lifetime of memories. "You're the only woman I've ever loved," he wrote. "The best decision I ever made was asking you to marry me." Our house had been our sanctuary through decades of life together. We'd paid off the mortgage just last year, and Frank had been so proud. It represented everything we'd built: our marriage, our family, our shared dreams. I never imagined it could be taken from me, especially by our own son. The funeral was held at Lakeside Memorial Chapel, a beautiful stone building surrounded by tall pine trees. Frank would have appreciated the architecture, the vaulted ceilings and stained glass windows. The chapel was filled with friends, family, and Frank's colleagues. So many people had come to pay their respects. I sat in the front row, Justin's empty seat beside me. My sister Darlene held my hand as people approached to share memories of Frank. His best friend Richard spoke about their 40-year friendship. My closest friend Beverly recalled Frank's famous barbecues and how he always made sure everyone felt welcome in our home. I was scheduled to speak last. As I gathered my notes, trying to compose myself, the chapel doors opened. The sound echoed through the quiet room, and everyone turned to look. Justin stood there in a dark suit, but he wasn't alone. A woman I'd never seen before held his arm. She was tall, probably in her late 40s, with carefully styled blonde hair and an expensive black dress that seemed more appropriate for a cocktail party than a funeral. They walked down the aisle together, and I noticed how Justin leaned toward her, how comfortable they seemed with each other. Something cold settled in my stomach as they approached the front row. Justin didn't meet my eyes. "Sorry we're late," he said loudly enough for nearby mourners to hear. Then he guided the woman to sit between us, physically separating me from my son at my husband's funeral. I was confused, but tried to focus on the service. Pastor Williams asked if anyone else wanted to share memories of Frank. To my surprise, Justin stood up. He walked to the podium, the strange woman watching him with an expression that looked almost proud. "My father was a complicated man," Justin began. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the warm tribute they expected. Most of you knew only one side of him, the side he showed the world. I felt dizzy. What was happening? What some of you don't know is that my father led two lives. And his true life, his real family, wasn't what you thought. Justin gestured toward the blonde woman. "This is Amanda Winters. She was the real love of my father's life. And the real mother to me." Gasps echoed through the chapel. I gripped the pew so hard my knuckles turned white. This couldn't be happening. My father met Amanda 22 years ago. He stayed in his first marriage for appearances, but his heart belonged elsewhere, with her. Justin's voice was cold rehearsed. "I've known the truth since I was 10. I spent weekends and holidays with them, my real family." People were whispering now. I felt their stares burning into me. Beverly moved to sit beside me, her arm around my shoulders. Justin walked toward me, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "Dad wanted you to have this. He didn't have the courage to give it to you himself. He placed it in my lap. The house isn't yours anymore," he said quietly. "It's going to who deserves it." Amanda stood and took Justin's arm. Her first words to me ever were, "Frank promised me everything. Now I'm collecting." Her smile never reached her eyes. They walked out together, leaving a stunned silence behind them. Pastor Williams tried to regain control of the service, but the damage was done. My husband's funeral had become a spectacle, and I was the unwitting centerpiece. My friend Richard immediately approached me. "Cora, that's nonsense. Frank adored you. Everyone here knows that." Beverly urged me to open the envelope, but I couldn't bear to. Not there, not with everyone watching. Whatever it contained would only bring more humiliation. The remainder of the service passed in a blur. People approached me afterward, offering awkward condolences, their eyes full of pity and curiosity. Some avoided me entirely, as though betrayal might be contagious. A few loyal friends formed a protective circle, helping me to the reception hall. I barely touched the food. Beverly drove me home, insisting on staying, but I needed to be alone. I needed to understand what had just happened, what was in that envelope, and how my son could have done this to me on the worst day of my life. The morning after the funeral, I finally opened the envelope. With trembling hands, inside was a legal document claiming that Frank had signed over our house to Amanda Winters 3 years ago. There was a copy of a deed with what appeared to be Frank's signature and a letter stating, I had 30 days to vacate the property. I couldn't breathe. This had to be a mistake. We'd paid off our mortgage together just last year. Frank had been so happy talking about how the house would always be our sanctuary. How could he have secretly signed it away? I was still trying to make sense of the papers when the doorbell rang. A court officer stood on my porch looking uncomfortable. "Mrs. Wilson, I have documents to serve you." He handed me another envelope thicker than the first. "This is an eviction notice. I'm sorry." I sat at my kitchen table, the place where Frank and I had shared thousands of meals, where we'd helped Justin with homework, where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries. According to these papers, I had no right to be here anymore. The phone rang. It was Justin. "Did you get the notice?" His voice was cold, unrecognizable. "Justin, what's happening? Who is this woman? Your father never mentioned her." "Because he knew you'd make it difficult. Dad and Amanda have been together for over 20 years. I've been part of their family since I was 10. "What are you talking about? You grew up in this house with us." "I lived with you, but I spent every other weekend with them. Those camping trips with Dad, the science competitions out of town, I was with my real family. Amanda raised me just as much as you did, more in some ways." My mind raced back through the years. Frank and Justin's special outings. The weekends, when Frank claimed to be taking Justin fishing or to sporting events. Had it all been a lie? "But you just helped me plan your father's funeral. You sat beside me when we chose his casket. You cried with me." My voice broke. "I did that for Dad. It's what he would have wanted. But now that he's gone, there's no reason to keep pretending. Amanda needs closure too." "Justin, please. This is our family home. Where am I supposed to go?" "That's not my problem. Dad made his choice years ago. He just didn't have the courage to tell you. Check the joint accounts if you don't believe me." After he hung up, I rushed to my computer. Our joint checking account, which had held over $40,000, was empty, except for $200. Our savings account showed a balance of $17. Frank's personal account had been closed. I called the bank in a panic. They informed me that Frank had withdrawn almost everything 2 weeks before his death. They couldn't tell me where the money had gone due to privacy policies. My sister Darlene arrived that afternoon, having driven 3 hours after my frantic call. She found me surrounded by bank statements and legal papers. "This can't be happening," I kept saying. "Frank wouldn't do this to me. We were happy." Darlene helped me sort through the documents. "These don't look right," she said, examining the deed. "The notary stamp is smudged. And why would Frank sign over the house but continue living here with you?" I had no answers, only questions that kept multiplying. How could I have been so blind? How could my husband of 35 years have maintained a second life? How could my son have participated in this deception? "You need a lawyer," Darlene insisted. "Right away. This Amanda woman can't just show up and take everything." I felt hollow. She already has. She's taken my husband, apparently years ago. She's taken my son. Now she wants my home. What else is left? Darlene grabbed my shoulders. "Your dignity, your truth, and we're going to fight for them." Beverly called that evening. As a paralegal at a law firm, she had connections. "I've made an appointment for you tomorrow with Thomas Winters. He specializes in estate disputes. Don't sign anything. Don't move any belongings. And don't talk to Justin or this woman without your lawyer present." That night, I couldn't sleep in our bed. The thought of Frank lying beside me for years while loving another woman made me physically ill. I curled up on the living room sofa surrounded by photo albums. Happy family vacations, Justin's graduation, our 25th anniversary trip. Had it all been a performance? The weight of betrayal crushed my chest. Not just Frank's betrayal, but Justin's. My son, whom I'd carried for 9 months, nursed through illnesses, cheered at games, consoled through heartbreaks. He'd been living a double life too, calling another woman mother, planning to take my home. In 24 hours, I'd lost everything. My husband, my son, my financial security, and soon my home. I was 60 years old and facing a future I'd never imagined, never prepared for. a future without my family, and without the certainty that anything in my life had been real. The next morning, Darlene drove me to Frank's office building. I'd never gone through his personal items there, but now I needed answers. His secretary Janet met us with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm so sorry about Frank Cora, and about what happened at the funeral. Everyone's talking about it." She lowered her voice. "I never met this Amanda person, not in the 20 years I worked with Frank." Janet gave us access to Frank's office and discreetly left us alone. The space was exactly as he'd left it. Architectural drawings spread across his desk, family photos on the credenza, his coffee mug still holding pencils. I stood frozen, absorbing his presence. Darlene was more practical. Where would he keep personal receipts, credit card statements? We began searching methodically. In his desk drawer, behind folders of current projects, I found a small key taped to the back of the drawer. It wasn't labeled. "A safety deposit box," Darlene suggested. In his planner, we found hotel reservations in Portland. Regular bookings every other month for the past several years. Frank had told me these were client meetings. The reservations were always for 2 people. At the bottom of his briefcase, hidden in a side pocket, was a second cell phone. The battery was dead. We took everything and left before Janet could ask questions. Back home, we charged the phone. The messages revealed years of communications between Frank and Amanda. Pet names, meeting arrangements, discussions about Justin. The most recent messages were about financial transfers and property arrangements. Frank had been moving assets to her systematically. "We need to find the storage unit," Darlene said, examining the key. The next day, we visited 3 storage facilities before finding the right one. Unit 235 at Seattle. Secure storage opened with our key. Inside were boxes of gifts, jewelry, designer clothes, artwork, all with gift tags to Amanda. Photo albums documented a hidden life. Frank and Amanda at restaurants, on vacations, at what appeared to be Justin's college graduation. My son stood between them, arms around both, smiling. I sank to the floor of the storage unit, the concrete cold through my clothes. It was all real, every bit of it. Darlene continued searching, finding financial records and property documents. "Cora, look at this." She held up papers for a condo in Portland purchased 10 years ago. The deed listed Frank and Amanda as co-owners. We took everything back to the house. That evening, Beverly arrived with Thomas Winters, the estate attorney. He reviewed the documents while I recounted everything we'd discovered. "Mrs. Wilson, this is certainly complicated, but I'm not convinced their claims will hold up." He pointed to the house deed Justin had given me. "This document has irregularities. The notary stamp isn't properly registered in Washington state." Thomas made calls to Frank's firm, discovering that Amanda Winters had indeed worked there briefly 22 years ago as an administrative assistant. She'd left the company around the time Justin turned 10. Using the phone records, Thomas identified Amanda's current address, the Portland condo. He dispatched a private investigator to learn more about her. "We need to understand what we're dealing with," he explained. The next day, the investigator called with preliminary findings. Amanda had a pattern of relationships with married professional men. She'd been sued twice by former partners for fraud, though both cases had been settled privately. She had financial problems with multiple collection judgments against her. "This wasn't love," Beverly said firmly. "This was a long con." I called Frank's best friend Richard, who was shocked by our discoveries. "Frank never mentioned her, not once in 40 years. He paused. "But there were times, especially these last few years, when he seemed troubled. I asked what was wrong, and he said he'd made mistakes he didn't know how to fix." We tracked down Justin's childhood friend Mike, who confirmed he knew about Amanda. Justin started telling me about his other mom when we were around 12. I thought he was making it up at first. Then one weekend he showed me pictures. He made me swear not to tell anyone. Each revelation cut deeper. While I was grading papers and keeping our home, while I was nursing Frank through his illness and planning our retirement, he'd been building a parallel life. and grooming our son to accept it. The most painful discovery came when the investigator found evidence that Amanda had been blackmailing Frank. Emails referenced consequences if he didn't comply with her financial demands. One message explicitly threatened to tell Cora everything if he didn't transfer the Portland condo entirely to her name. She had leverage, Thomas explained, and Frank paid to keep his secret. After 2 weeks of investigation, I finally had a clearer picture. Frank hadn't simply fallen in love with another woman. He'd made a mistake early in our marriage and became trapped in a situation he couldn't control. Amanda had systematically increased her demands using Justin as a pawn. And my husband, rather than facing the truth, had chosen deception. Understanding didn't lessen the betrayal, but it helped me focus on fighting back. 3 weeks after the funeral, I hit rock bottom. The initial shock had worn off, leaving raw grief in its place. I barely ate, couldn't sleep. The betrayal consumed me. Darlene had returned home to her family but called daily. Beverly checked on me regularly. Thomas was building our case. But in the quiet moments alone, despair overwhelmed me. I wandered through our house, my house, touching familiar objects. The kitchen table, where we'd eaten countless meals. The living room where we'd watched movies together. The backyard swing where I'd pushed Justin as a child. Had any of it been real? One night, I found myself standing in our bedroom closet, running my fingers over Frank's clothes. His favorite blue sweater still hung there. I pressed it to my face, inhaling his scent. Memories flooded back. Frank wearing this sweater on our anniversary trip, his arm around me as we walked along the Victoria Harbour. I sank to the floor, the sweater clutched to my chest, sobs tearing through me. 35 years of marriage, a lifetime of memories. Had it all been a lie? That night I contemplated ending everything. The pain was too immense, the future too bleak. I was 60 years old, about to lose my home, betrayed by the two people I loved more. What was left, I found myself in Frank's office, opening his desk drawer, where he kept important papers. Behind folders of home maintenance records and insurance policies, I discovered a small wooden box I'd never seen before. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me in Frank's handwriting. The first was dated from our first anniversary. My dearest Cora, it began. 1 year ago today, I made the best decision of my life, marrying you. Each letter marked a milestone. Anniversaries, Justin's birth, special moments in our marriage. The most recent was from 6 months ago. Cora, my love, he'd written. As I face my own mortality, I'm overwhelmed with regret for my failures and gratitude for your unwavering love. You deserved better than the man I became. I hope someday you'll find it in your heart to forgive me. You were always my true north, even when I lost my way. He knew he was dying. He knew his secret would emerge. Yet he couldn't find the courage to confess. I stayed up all night reading those letters, tracing our life together through Frank's words. They revealed a man who genuinely loved me, but who had made catastrophic mistakes. A man trapped in a web partly of his own making. A coward, perhaps, but not the cold-hearted monster I'd begun to imagine. The next morning, I called Beverly. I need to fight for what's mine. She arrived an hour later with a notebook. Let's make a plan. We went through our marriage history. I'd contributed to our mortgage from my teaching salary for 30 years. I'd used an inheritance from my parents for the down payment. My name was on all the original property documents. We found our wedding album and the photo of Justin's birth, me holding our newborn son, exhausted but radiant with joy. No matter what Justin believed, now I was his mother. I had the stretch marks and memories to prove it. You raised him, Beverly reminded me. You were there every day, not just convenient weekends. You nursed him through chickenpox and helped him with calculus. You taught him to drive. You are his mother. That afternoon, I called my former principal at Lakeside Elementary. Of course I remember your family, Cora, she said. Frank volunteered at every school event. Justin was always so proud when his dad helped build the sets for school plays. Her words reinforced what the letters had begun to reveal. Frank's deception was complex. Whatever relationship he had with Amanda, his life with us hadn't been entirely false. The Frank who coached Little League and attended parent-teacher conferences, who designed our deck and planned family vacations. That man had been real too. I began collecting evidence of our life together. Financial records showing my contributions to our home, photos documenting our family history, letters from Frank expressing his love, statements from friends who had witnessed our marriage. Then I contacted Thomas Winters. "I'm ready to fight." Thomas filed a countersuit challenging Amanda's claim to our house and Frank's assets. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks after Frank's death, which gave us time to build our case. Thomas discovered that Frank's official will filed with the firm's attorney 5 years earlier still named me as his primary beneficiary. The documents Amanda presented were recent and had irregularities that suggested possible forgery. "Washington is a community property state," Thomas explained. "Assets acquired during marriage belong equally to both spouses regardless of whose name is on the title. Your decades of contribution to the mortgage payments and household establish clear claim." Amanda's attorney, a sleek man named Douglas Reed, attempted to have the case dismissed. "My client had a long-established relationship with the deceased. She has documentation proving his intent to provide for her." The judge denied his motion. "This case has sufficient complexity to warrant full consideration." Outside the courtroom, I came face to face with Justin for the first time since the funeral. He looked tired, the confidence from that day replaced with uncertainty. "This isn't what Dad wanted," he said weakly. "Do you really believe that, or is it what Amanda told you he wanted?" He had no answer. The private investigator Thomas hired uncovered Amanda's concerning history. She had a record of fraud charges in California under a different name before moving to Washington. She'd been involved with at least 3 other married men, all of whom had provided her with financial support. Most damning was the evidence of blackmail. The investigator found a witness, a former colleague of Frank's, who confirmed that Amanda had threatened to reveal their relationship to me unless Frank met her increasingly extravagant demands. "She trapped him," the colleague explained. "Frank made a terrible mistake getting involved with her, but when he tried to end it, she threatened to destroy his family. Then she started including Justin in their weekends, making it impossible for Frank to cut ties without hurting his son." Thomas prepared me for what would be a difficult trial. "Amanda will make accusations about your marriage. She'll try to paint herself as the victim. You need to be prepared for painful testimony." I spent hours practicing my responses, focusing on documented facts rather than emotions. Beverly helped me select appropriate courtroom attire, professional but not flashy. Darlene returned to stay with me through the proceedings. The trial began on a rainy Tuesday. Amanda took the stand first, weaving a tale of a great love affair thwarted by Frank's inability to leave his first marriage. "Frank promised me everything," she testified, tears in her eyes. "We were the real family. Cora was just the woman who held the social position he needed for his career." Her performance was compelling, but Thomas was prepared. During cross-examination, he methodically dismantled her claims. "Ms. Winters, is this your signature on these loan applications?" He presented documents showing she'd taken out multiple high-interest loans over the years. "And these collection notices all coinciding with transfers from Frank Wilson's accounts." Amanda's composure cracked. "Frank wanted to take care of me, like he took care of the other married men you've been involved with." Thomas presented evidence of her previous relationships, all following the same pattern. Justin testified next. He described weekends with Frank and Amanda, holidays celebrated in the Portland condo, the narrative they'd created of being the real family, while I represented obligation. "But you lived with your mother full-time until college," Thomas clarified. "She attended your school events, cared for you when you were ill, helped with homework." "Yes," Justin admitted. "And these claims about your father's wishes regarding the house? Did he tell you directly, Or did you hear this from Amanda? Justin hesitated. Amanda told me, but I'm sure it's what Dad wanted. When it was my turn to testify, I felt surprisingly calm. I spoke of our 35 years together, my contributions to our home and family, the Frank I knew. Flawed but fundamentally decent. I won't claim our marriage was perfect, I said. Clearly it wasn't, but it was real. Whatever relationship Frank had with Amanda, it doesn't erase the life we built together. I presented Frank's letters written over decades, expressing his love and regret. These are not the words of a man who saw me as merely a social convenience. The trial's turning point came when Thomas called a surprise witness, Amanda's former roommate from Portland. She testified that Amanda had explicitly described her strategy. Find successful married men, make them dependent on you, then gradually increase demands. They'll pay anything to protect their comfortable lives. As the trial progressed, Justin began distancing himself from Amanda. He watched her testimony with growing discomfort, noticed the inconsistencies Thomas highlighted. During a court recess, I overheard him arguing with her in the hallway. "That's not what you told me," he said. "You said Dad wanted to leave her but couldn't, because she was unstable." Amanda hissed back, "Don't be naive. We need to present a united front." After 3 grueling days of testimony, the judge ruled. Amanda's claims to our house were dismissed. The transfers of assets were deemed suspicious and potentially coerced. Frank's original will would stand with me as the primary beneficiary. Amanda would keep only the Portland condo, which had been legally transferred to her years earlier. The court finds insufficient evidence that Frank Wilson intended to disinherit his wife of 35 years. The judge stated, "Furthermore, there are concerning indications of undue influence and potential fraud in the recent documents presented." As we left the courthouse, Amanda confronted me on the steps. "You think you've won? You had a husband who couldn't stand your boring, predictable life. He came to me for passion, for excitement. I gave him what you never could." I looked at this woman, who had caused so much pain, who had manipulated my husband, and poisoned my son against me. I felt no hatred, only pity. What I had was a husband who came home every night for 35 years, who built a life with me, who despite his mistakes left me letters of love and regret, not fraudulent property documents. I don't know what Frank gave you, Amanda, but it wasn't his whole heart. That remained in our home with his family. I walked away, leaving her speechless on the courthouse steps. A week after the trial, I received a letter from Justin. "Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm hoping we can talk. Coffee at Westlake Cafe Thursday at 10. I debated not going. The wound was still raw, but despite everything, he was my son. I arrived early, choosing a table by the window. Justin walked in at exactly 10, looking nervous. He'd lost weight. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. I don't know where to begin. "Try the truth," I suggested. "When did it start?" Justin stared into his coffee. "I was 10. Dad took me to Portland for what he said was a special project. Amanda was there. She was so different from you. Glamorous, exciting. She let me stay up late, eat whatever I wanted. It felt like an adventure. And later, when you were old enough to understand. By then, it was normal. Weekends with Dad and Amanda, weekdays with you. They told me it had to be a secret because you wouldn't understand. That you'd be angry and stop me from seeing them." He looked up, shame in his eyes. "They said you were fragile, that the truth would break you. Did you ever question their story? I was your mother. You knew me. Kids believe what adults tell them. By the time I might have questioned it, the pattern was set." He paused. "And honestly, I liked having this exciting secret life. It made me feel special. And the funeral, the legal documents." Justin's face flushed. "Amanda said Dad had promised everything to her. That you'd been preparing to divorce him anyway. She had papers with his signature." He swallowed hard. I believed her because it fit the narrative I'd been given my whole life. But watching her in court, seeing how she manipulated everyone, I realized I'd been used. I studied my son's face, Frank's eyes, my stubborn chin. The little boy who'd collected rocks and built forts in our backyard. The teenager who'd struggled with algebra but excelled at debate club. My child despite everything. I'm not sure I can forgive you yet, I said honestly. You hurt me deeply at the worst possible moment. I know. His voice broke. I've lost both my parents, dad to death, and you to my own stupidity. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm sorry. Truly sorry. We talked for 2 hours. Justin shared more details about the Portland weekends, how Amanda had gradually shaped his perception of our family. I told him about my investigation, the evidence of blackmail Frank's hidden letters. Dad was weak, Justin concluded. He made a terrible mistake and then couldn't find a way out. We all made mistakes, I acknowledged. I was blind to what was happening. I trusted completely and never questioned. That's on me. As we prepared to leave, Justin asked hesitantly, Can we talk again, maybe next week? I nodded. Small steps, Justin. That's all I can offer right now. Over the next few months, I made significant changes. I couldn't bear to stay in the house filled with both genuine and false memories. With Thomas's help, I sold it for a good price and bought a smaller townhouse closer to Darlene. I donated most of Frank's belongings, but kept his letters and selected photographs. I joined a support group for people dealing with betrayal trauma. Sharing my story with others who understood helped me process my anger and grief. One woman in the group had experienced a similar deception and became a close friend. Justin and I continued meeting regularly. Our relationship was fragile, being rebuilt on more honest ground. He shared his confusion growing up with contradictory messages, his anger at realizing how he'd been manipulated. I listened gradually, separating my son from the betrayal he'd participated in. At Christmas, 6 months after Frank's death, I invited Justin to my new home. It was awkward, but necessary. We exchanged simple gifts and shared memories of happier times. As he was leaving, he hugged me. The first physical contact since the funeral. I'm trying to be worthy of being your son again, he whispered. You always were, I replied. We just lost our way for a while. Amanda disappeared from our lives after the court ruling. According to Justin, she attempted to contact him several times, but he blocked her number. The last we heard, she had moved to Arizona. As the first anniversary of Frank's death approached, I found myself reflecting on our marriage with more clarity. There had been real love there, despite his betrayal. Frank had been deeply flawed, a man who made catastrophic choices, but also a man who coached Little League games and designed dream houses and saved love letters for 35 years. I learned that it's possible for contradictory truths to coexist. Frank loved me and betrayed me. Justin is my beloved son and the person who hurt me most deeply. I was both blind and perceptive. My marriage was both real and built partly on lies. The most important lesson was about trusting my own reality. Amanda and Justin had tried to rewrite my history, to tell me that my life wasn't what I had lived. But I knew the truth of my daily existence. The meals cooked, the homework, helped with the illnesses, nursed the celebrations shared. Those moments were real, regardless of what else was happening that I couldn't see. I found strength I never knew I possessed. At 60, I rebuilt my life from ashes. I made new friends, explored new interests, and discovered I could stand firmly in my own truth, even when others tried to shake my foundation. If you've ever had someone try to rewrite your reality, remember that your lived experience matters. Trust yourself, and know that even after the most devastating betrayal, there's a way forward. A different life than you planned, perhaps, but one still worth living fully. Let me know in the comments if you've ever discovered a shocking truth that changed how you saw your past. Has anyone tried to make you question your own memories? How did you reclaim your narrative? Don't forget to like and subscribe if my story touched you, and share with someone who might need to hear that they can survive betrayal and rebuild. Thank you for listening to my journey from devastation to reclaiming my life. Remember, your truth matters, and so do you.